Here's my Zoom. I'm also looking forward to getting back and having my normal computer set up where I've got two screens. It makes it so much easier. Right, here we go. Can you all see my screen? Yeah, we're good. All right, cool. So I wanted to talk about logging because I know that, well, firstly, there's a couple of new faces on the program, but also I know that even for those of you who've been here a while, logging is still one of the biggest challenges, not just in knowing how to do it, but just even when you do know how to do it, the fact that it can just be it can feel like a lot of admin, it can feel like hard work. And so I hope that I can show you some things today that make that process a little bit easier and can kind of reduce some of those barriers to entry. So first of all, just to kind of demonstrate, is it going to let me change? Okay, first of all, to kind of demonstrate why logging is so important, most of you who are on a weight loss journey will have a deficit of about 500 calories a day. Hopefully you will understand by now that in order to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit, which means you need fewer calories going into your body than the amount of calories you're burning each day. And for most of you, you're on a deficit of about 500 calories per day, which equates to about half a kilo of weight loss per week. Now, to burn 500 calories, that's going to need a pretty intense 60-minute workout. Anything less than something very intense, you're going to end up having to work for more than an hour. But an intense 60-minute workout is going to burn about 500 calories. It's going to take you 10,000 to 12,000 steps in a day to burn 500 calories. But in order to consume 500 calories, so in order to take 500 calories, we've just talked about 500 calories out, but in order to get 500 calories in, it's remarkably easy. We're talking about 2 Snickers bars, we're talking about 1 Big Mac, not with the fries, just the burger on its own, 2 glasses of wine, large glass of wine, 130 grams of grated cheddar. I know some of you are a fan of your cheese. 2.5 bottles, or 2 1/3 of a bottle of full fat Coke. Or this is where it really matters, just 4 tablespoons of oil. So if you're cooking your meals at home, or even if you're not cooking your meals at home, but you can almost guarantee, even if you're eating at a restaurant, they're going to be using a fair amount of oil when they cook your food. Or maybe you get a starter when you're at a restaurant and they bring you out some bread with oil, or bread with balsamic vinegar and oil, and you just happily dipping your oil in your bread in your oil. You're not even thinking about the calories in that because it's just a little appetizer. Just 4 tablespoons of oil adds up to the same equivalent of like a 60-minute workout or 10 to 12,000 steps in the gym. So you can see how it's very, very easy to start to add on 500 calories to your calorie intake, but it's relatively tricky to burn those 500 calories. And all those 500 calories are all it takes for you to no longer be losing weight. All right, if you're in a 500 calorie deficit to lose half a kilo a week, as soon as you lose those 500 calories per day, you stop. As soon as you are accidentally consuming an extra 500 calories per day without realizing, that weight loss stops. So that's why accuracy with your logging matters. You have to make sure you're logging everything, because otherwise you can very quickly lose that deficit and then you're no longer making progress with your weight loss goals. Does that all make sense? Cool. So the benefit of logging is that it ensures you're getting the right calories in. It ensures you're getting the right macros in as well, because we don't want to just be getting the right number of calories. We want to make sure you're also getting enough protein and getting enough fiber and all the things that you need to actually stay healthy and not just lose weight. It gives you a moment to stop and think as well. I know logging is really boring, but if you log your meals before you actually eat them, which is what you should be doing, and we'll talk about that later, but if you actually log your food before you put it in your mouth, it gives you that moment to think, actually, do I really want this piece of chocolate? Do I really want this piece of bread with oil? You know, whatever it is, it just gives you that moment to think, is it worth the calories that I'm about to put in my mouth, or actually would I rather save those for something a bit later? It teaches you what's actually in your food choices as well. So you're gaining knowledge that you can take forward for the rest of your life. All right. So hopefully you're not going to be stuck with me for the rest of your life for your sake. I would love to continue working with you all for forever, but I'm sure you don't want that. So hopefully this process teaches you what you need to be able to succeed without my help long term. And it gives me visibility while we are still working together so that I can keep you accountable as well. If you don't log stuff, then I don't know what's going on and I can't help you. All right. So there's just a few of the benefits. I'm sure there's some that I've forgotten to put on the list here, but lots of benefits to actually logging. So I know it is boring, I know it's tedious, but it's really, really helpful for your progress. So how to log? Using the fitness app that I provide you, this is the flow. You're just going to tap that plus button at the bottom of your home screen, that yellow plus button, tap the meal, and then it's going to ask you for a photo. Now, you don't have to take a photo. There is that skip photo button, but I think it's a good way to be able to find meals again in the future, and I'll talk about why that's important. So if you're visual like I am, just being able to quickly see a photo of a meal makes it much easier to find than having to read every line or scroll through it. So taking photos is a good idea. Plus it also means if there's an error in the logging, I'm more likely to be able to spot it. So if there's something wrong with the accuracy of what you've logged, if I can see a picture, I'm more likely to be able to correlate that and say like, you've said that you've had this, but it looks like it's more likely that, so we just need to change it. All right. Then you use that search bar at the top right in the middle at the top, which will bring up examples of the food that you've searched for. Hopefully it will bring up the exact one that you searched for. And then when you find the food that you're looking for, you just tap the little blue tick button next to it, and that will add that to the list of things that you've eaten. And you can then keep going between 4 and 5 and 4 and 5 and 4 and 5 as many times as it takes to add everything on a meal. All right. So if you've made a sandwich which uses bread and cheese and tomatoes and lettuce and pickle, then you just search for bread, tick it, search for pickle, tick it, search for cheese, tick it. And you tick all the things, and then once you've added everything that is in that meal, then you go to number 6, which is the review button up at the top, and then you can go through and review everything that you've added. If you need to, you can change the values. So if you've ended up adding a little bit more, you can change it from 40 grams of pickle to 50 grams of pickle, whatever it is. So just change the values. I would also encourage you to, where possible, rather than using values like you see it says 1 cup of cherry tomatoes, you're better off speaking in weight or units. So 3 cherry tomatoes as opposed to 1 cup of cherry tomatoes, because cups aren't very accurate, but we'll talk more about this later. And then once you're happy that everything you've selected is correct, then you just tap the log button, and then that's it. It's added to your log. Obviously, that process, if you're adding lots of different ingredients, can take a little while, and I'm going to talk about some ways to make that much easier and quicker in the future. All right, but that's the process from step 1 to step 6 of how to. So step 1 to step 8 of how to log everything in your meal. Cool. So one of the ways you can make this process a bit easier, rather than having to use the search bar, is to use the barcode scanner. So you'll find that just next to the search bar. Rather than searching for the food and then scrolling through a massive list to find the exact one that you had. So for example, if you search the word bread, it's going to bring up about 56 different types of bread, and you have to going to scroll down to find the one that is most similar to the bread that you had. Whereas if you use the barcode scanner, admittedly, not everything has a barcode registered to it in the database, which is a bit of a shame. But if it is in the database, you're going to get the exact product. All right. So I scanned this carton of soy milk, and that's exactly the one that came up. Was the So Good high protein soy milk by Sanitarium. All right. So you're going to get the exact products. So then you don't have to worry about the accuracy, because the accuracy will be there. So you use the barcode scanner. That's going to make it quicker. If you are using the database, just make sure that you are, where possible, using verified items that have been verified by the USDA, which is the United States Dietary Association, you're going to get more reliable results. The ones that don't have that blue tick have mostly been added by other users of the app. Fingers crossed, other people who are using it have entered the data correctly, but they may not have done, which is why using the USDA approved ones is just going to be a bit more reliable. And then you're also going to want to just compare the values against the values on the tub, but we'll talk about that in a second as well. Okay, so double checking your selections. Just check that the values that are coming up on the app match the values that are coming up on the nutritional label on the back of the carton. All right, so on the back of the carton, it will pretty much always have a per serving, which might be per half a pack, or it might be per 250 grams, or whatever it is, but it will always have a per 100 mil or per 100 grams as well, and that's standardized. So that therefore you should be able to see by having a look on the app and comparing against the nutrition label, just checking that before you select that item, just make sure it is representative of what's actually going in your mouth. All right, and if not, have a look for a different one. And where on the app you can see it says half a can of baked beans, you can also change that. Where it says can, you can change it to grams, and then where it says half, you can change it to 100, and you can dial it in to be 100 grams instead of half a can, which is going to be a more accurate way of doing it. Okay, selecting quantities, like I just said, rather than using slices or cans or cups or any of those kind of nonsense values, where possible, use grams. It's always going to be the most accurate way, okay? The reason why is, especially even if you are eating half a can of beans, for example, right now with companies trying to save costs, you've probably heard of shrinkflation, which is where the cost of the product stays the same, but the product has got slightly smaller and no one's noticed. I think the most iconic example is either like a box of Quality Street, which I think used to be the size of your head and contained 1 million Quality Street, and now it's, you know, this big and contains about four chocolates. Or another one is like Toblerone. You probably saw all the hoo-ha when Toblerone went from, you know, having conjoined pyramids to kind of looking like a heartbeat, because they've kept the price of the product the same, but they've made the product much smaller. And therefore, if you are using values like half a can or half a packet or something like that, it's only going to be valid as long as the packet is still the same as when they first logged that product in the database. Does that make sense? So if the database hasn't been updated, but the product has been changed, then now half a packet, half a can isn't going to be the same. All right, so use grams, because grams will always be the same. Obviously, if you are going to use grams, you're going to need to make sure you are weighing your food. This is where that process can become even more tedious, and I totally understand that. I can relate, because I'm also logging my food right now, and it is a pain in the ass, but it is the most reliable way to make sure you are getting the results that you want. And ultimately, there's nothing more frustrating than not seeing the results, just feeling like you're stuck on a treadmill, stuck on a hamster wheel, not moving forwards. That's a lot more frustrating. As I've said to one or two of you recently, pick your hard. Yes, tracking is hard, but being stuck with the body you don't want or the health you don't want is harder, and it's going to get especially harder as you get older as well. So examples here, if you use like a tablespoon of peanut butter, well, that's going to make a huge difference whether the tablespoon is heaped or unheaped. But what you log in the app, if you're just logging a tablespoon of peanut butter, well, that could be anywhere from 200 calories to 95 calories, depending on how big a tablespoon you've done it. But if you actually weigh it, it's going to be much more reliable. Now, again, that process of weighing things becomes quite hard if you're making a meal and you're adding ingredients to a pan, and you can't exactly take that pan and keep putting it on the scales when it's hot, right? it's going to become quite tricky to keep weighing food if you're adding the ingredients one after another to the pan. So there's the tare trick. Does anyone do this already? You might know what I'm about to say, but give me a thumbs up or just jump in on the group chat if you already do this. The tare trick is rather than weighing as you add the food into your pot or your dish or your pan, rather than weighing the pan and seeing the weight go up in the pan, put the product, so that might be your jar of peanut butter, put your jar of peanut butter on the scales, zero it, and then as you take the peanut butter out of the jar, you're going to see a negative number appear on the scales, all right? So if you've just taken 20 grams of peanut butter out of the jar, those scales are now going to read -20, as long as you zero it when you put it on the scale. So you put the jar on the scales, hit the tare button or the zero button, take your scoop of peanut butter, and now the scale say -20. That means you've just taken 20 grams of peanut butter from the jar. Hope I don't have to explain that. So therefore, it's a much easier way. So if you have your pan on the stove and you're adding your ingredients, add the ingredients from the container that you're taking them out of rather than the container that you're adding them into. You can do either way, but I think doing it the negative way from the container, the tare trick, is much easier. All right, so lock it and load it. All right, raw versus cooked. This is something really important to look out for. Things like pasta, rice, dried lentils and beans, anything where you are where there is a dry weight, you have to check whether the packet and whether the entry on the database is the dry weight or the cooked weight, or the dry weight or the boiled weight, or whatever it is. Because obviously if you're taking dry pasta and then you're cooking it, it's going to weigh a lot more once it's puffed itself up with water. Same with rice. Okay, so you need to make sure that what you're logging, if you are selecting 100 grams of cooked rice in the database, then don't be weighing 100 grams of dry rice, because otherwise, actually that dry rice, once it's cooked, is going to become more like 250, 300 grams. And all of a sudden, you've logged less than half of what you actually ate. Does that make sense? So just make sure what you're logging is the same as what you are actually eating. Don't mix your cooked and dry. Same with things like chicken or anything that has quite a lot of water content. Just make sure it's raw versus cooked, because again, uncooked chicken contains a lot of water. Cooked chicken contains a lot less water. So if you are weighing your food before you cook it, but then you're logging the cooked version, it's going to be way off. All right, so do check it. Doesn't really matter which one you use, as long as what you have selected is the same as what you've eaten. All right, watch out for that. Whoops, wrong way. Okay, so here are some things that are going to make this whole journey so much easier for you, because I do totally understand that all of this right now, it's like, okay, there's 8 steps to log your food, and then you need to make sure you're weighing it, and da-da-da-da-da-da. I know it's a lot, okay? And so here are some ways that are going to make that whole journey easier for you. Firstly, use the Discover tab in the app. There's a huge library of foods that are all healthy, balanced. You can select them using the filter. I've not actually shown the filter on these screenshots, but there's a filter button that looks like 3 little sliders. If you select that filter button, you can choose meals that are only 15 minutes to cook. You can choose meals that only need 1 pot. So if you're trying to make things a bit easier for yourself, use one of those recipes that is easier by design, takes less time and only needs 1 pot. All right, so use those filters. But then also, if you cook exactly what is in that recipe, then all you have to do to log it is hit the button that says I ate this. On the right hand screen, you just tap the little button, the little circle in the top right of the image, and then click add, and that's it. That's it added to your diary. Then you don't need to go through and search for individual individual ingredients. You just hit I ate this. You do obviously still have to weigh the ingredients as you're cooking it, but you can. But still, the process of logging it is a lot easier. Okay. Meal prepping, you can also use it to meal prep. Now, here's the advantage of meal prepping is that you only have to go through that process, once or twice a week. And Dorothea really made me laugh the other day, because Dorothea is one of the few clients who uses this meal plan almost religiously. I would say probably 80 to 90% of the things she eats comes from the meal plan. And she says, this is exactly the reason why I prefer to use the meal plan, because I just click that I ate it rather than having to think too much. It's too much of a headache having to log. All right, so she recognizes that issue as well. She just uses the meal plan. And says, also, I find that I never experience cravings because the meal plan is nutritionally packed. I feel like I've paid her to say this, but that was straight out of her own mouth, or out of her own thumbs. She says, unless I'm sleep deprived, because unfortunately Dorothea struggles a bit with sleep because of various things, but she finds she doesn't get cravings when she's using the meal plan because she's getting all of the nutrients she needs. So there you go. Don't take it from me, take it from Dorothea. She's far more trustworthy than me. But yeah, you can use that button where it says 1 serving. If you change that serving size to 4, 5, 6, however many servings you want, it will update all of the ingredients to tell you the quantities you need if you want to bulk cook it. Then once you've bulk cooked it, you don't need to think about what you're going to have for dinner tomorrow, what you're going to have for lunch for tomorrow. In fact, you may not need to think about what you're going to have for dinner for the next 5 days, if that's how many portions you decide to make. You just make enough of it, portion it up into your Tupperware, stick it in the fridge, and then tomorrow you don't have to worry about that decision fatigue about what am I going to have for dinner. Is it going to be balanced? Is it going to fit my macros? You can just enjoy that meal that you know is solid. And this is something Rebecca told me a couple of days ago, is she said the decision fatigue has been so much better by meal prepping. And obviously, if you use the meal plan, then you don't even need to think about what you're going to meal prep. You just meal prep one of the options that's on there. And just to be clear as well, if I just go back to that previous screen, you don't have to use the meals that appear in that meals tab down on the bottom right of your home screen. Those are the ones that it's selected for you based on your nutritional values, but you can also use that discover tab when you go to actually log your meals. There's a discover button, and then you can search through any of the meals in the library. Okay, you can also do that by using the recycle button there on the meal plan tab. All right, okay, that's the first thing. Use your meal plan and meal prep if you can. The other thing is that you don't have to meal prep using the recipes in the app. I know that 1 or 2 of you aren't a big fan of the recipes provided in the app. So if you have things that you prefer to eat, as long as they fit your calories and macros, you can add it to your recipes, so that rather than next time having to find every individual ingredient every time you cook it, if every time you make a chili you're having to search for 200 grams of kidney beans and 400 grams of beef and 3 red peppers and you're going to get really bored of probably eating that meal, and you're going to just end up eating beans on toast for every meal because you're not going to be bothered to have to search for everything. But if you create as a recipe, again, when you go to the log a meal function, rather than just leaving it on the create meal tab down on the bottom left, you swipe over to my recipes and create a new recipe. Then what you do is exactly the same as what you would do when you log a meal, but you are now saving it for later so that you can use it again and again and again. All right. And then just like before with the meal plan, you can then use that recipe for meal planning by increasing the serving size. And then you can use those instructions to make enough for the next 5 days if you want. All right. So add your own recipes and then use them for meal prep. Cool. That, I think, meal prepping is a game changer. It just can cut down the amount of time you're spending in the kitchen every day, and again, cuts down on decision fatigue. I think this is definitely true for myself, and I'm sure it's true for some of you. the times I eat the worst food is when I'm just hungry and I haven't got anything healthy to eat, so I'll just reach for 4 bowls of granola or 2 slices of toast with peanut butter, or not those things are terrible, but they quite often aren't balanced in what I need for that day. But it's just like I'm starving hungry and I don't want to have to think about cooking, so I end up eating for convenience, and that's where things end up going wrong. Okay, repeating foods that you've already logged. So if you've logged a food, so in this case this was actually from the meal plan, but if you've logged a food, then go back to it the previous day. If you know that last week on Tuesday you ate a spinach cottage pie quiche and you want to eat it again today, then you can just go back to your Tuesday log, tap those 3 buttons and copy it to another day. While you do it, I would also add it to your favorites, because it's going to be much easier to find it again if you add it to your favorites. All right. That's another way to just speed up the logging. If you're eating the same thing that you ate a few days ago, just copy it over. Okay, what about when you're eating out though? This is all very easy when you know exactly what's in your food. So if you're cooking your own meals or you're using the meal plan, then obviously you know what's going into your food. But as soon as you step foot inside a restaurant or you order a takeaway, you no longer have that insight as to what's in your food. So a few things you can do. Firstly, chain restaurants are generally pretty good at having the calorie information, at least, about the food on their menus. I'm sure you don't always want to be eating at Wetherspoons, but on those occasions when you just want something to eat, if you choose a large chain restaurant, then there's a better chance that you'll be able to see the calories on the menu. And sometimes some of them will even have the macros. It's not very common, but sometimes it might say calories 400, and then it might say CPF for carbs, proteins, fats, and it will just have like, a couple of numbers across the bottom. And that's normally in grams. So chain restaurants are often good. Sometimes you can find that information out by doing a quick search on their website. So even if they don't have it on the menus, they might have it on the website. And failing that, I think the best way is ChatGPT or whatever AI you prefer to use. And I'll talk about how to do that in a second. But then also, failing both of those things, one option you've got is to estimate and round up. All right. So if you're on a fat loss journey, obviously you're going to want to make sure that you don't go over your calories. So you're better off overestimating what you've eaten rather than underestimating. Remember that, actually, I'm going to put this to a little pop quiz. Jump in on the group chat or unmute yourself. Bonus points for anyone who gets these right. How many calories in a gram of protein? How many calories in a gram of carbohydrates? And how many calories in a gram of fat? Go! I need that countdown timer. No one? I know you know this. Hey, Rebecca's got it. Good stuff. Yes, so a gram of carbohydrates has 4 calories. A gram of protein has 4 calories, and a gram of fat has 9 calories. Well done, Rebecca. Triple bonus points there. So if you look at a meal and you know, hopefully, because you've been doing quite a bit of logging, you've started to get an idea that, okay, well, this meal is going to contain, this amount of fat and that amount of protein, this amount of carbohydrates, even just roughly, then you can make an educated guess about the calories and just round it up slightly if you're not sure. Okay, so use that knowledge that you've tirelessly built to actually serve you in those moments. So just remember 4 calories for carbs and protein, 9 calories for fat. Now if you use ChatGPT, which is going to do a similar thing, plus using its knowledge about different foods, take a photo of the meal. Ideally, put something for scale in that image. So you might want to put a spoon or a fork on the plate, because generally they're going to be a standard size, although maybe not spoons, because it could be a teaspoon. But put something in the image that is a pretty standard size, so that the ChatGPT can get an idea for how big the food was, because a burger could be this big, it could be that big. All right, they could be skinny fries, they could be chunky chips. So if you put something in the image, it's going to give ChatGPT a better chance of guessing accurately. And then and then give ChatGPT both the image and as much information as you can give it. So if you know that they are, if you know, for example, that the salad has an oil dressing on it, mention that the salad has olive oil on it. If you know that the burger is a beef burger, say that it's a beef burger. If you know that it's a veggie burger, say that it's a veggie burger, because ChatGPT probably won't know just by looking that that is a vegan Beyond Burger. It'll probably just think that it's a beef burger, and the values are going to be very different. So give it as much information about the meal as you can. So I've said, estimate the calories and macros in this vegan Beyond Burger and fries. I could have gone even further and said, and the ketchup, and also there's some mayonnaise in the burger, but you get the idea. Okay, and then ChatGPT is going to estimate all these things, and all you really need to know is those final figures, the total. So in this case, it all adds up to about 1,000 calories, with roughly 30 grams of protein, roughly 100 grams of carbs, and roughly 50 grams of fat. All right. As you can see, though, even this estimation is between 45 grams of fat and 60 grams of fat. That's a 15-gram difference, and when we know that every gram of fat is 9 calories, that's nearly 150 extra calories, right? I think I've got that right. Cool. And then once you've used ChatGPT, then the way to put that information into your log is to, once again, go to the log section. But then when it comes up with the search bar and the barcode scanner, switch over to the custom tab. So you've got recent, favorites, and custom. Tap the custom thing. And then all it's going to ask you is for a name of the meal. So you could just put in burger and chips or whatever you want. Just put in a name for the meal and then put in the calories, protein, carbs, and fats that ChatGPT told you for the total. All right, you don't need to do every individual item. You can if you're being particularly diligent, but you don't have to put fries and ketchup and burger. Just put in the total meal estimate and put them into those 4 boxes. Again, you don't even really need to put the serving size because we're doing it for the whole meal, and it's not like you're going to have 1.5 times that meal. So in this situation, the serving size doesn't really matter too much because we're talking more about the. But you could change that from grams to servings, and then put 1 serving. Up to you. All right. So add it in as a custom thing, and then once you've done it, you can then always find that meal again. That's the other thing. Is not only has it made it easier by using ChatGPT, but you can also just use that meal. Has anyone done this process before? Has anyone used this system to just estimate their meals? Or have you used half of this system, or have you done it in a different way? Let me know. Just jump in on the group chat.
Yeah, I use ChatGPT taking photos, and then sometimes I'll even put a link to the website of the restaurant I'm in.
Love it.
The menu is.
That's great thinking.
It's brilliant.
Great, and
then I do put it in format. I can copy it into MyFitnessPal. Then I just copy and paste it.
Yeah, amazing, good stuff. Well done, Becca. Yeah, obviously I know some of you use MyFitnessPal. I'm only talking about the native app today, so apologies if you use MyFitnessPal. There are some pros and cons to MyFitnessPal. The pros are that the database on MyFitnessPal is generally more reliable, unfortunately. So often the barcode scanner works a bit more reliably because it's got a bigger database, and often the entries in the database are more accurate. But also because MyFitnessPal is used so ubiquitously, you're also likely to find a lot more user entered entries which may not be accurate. All right, so there's pros and cons. The other downside to MyFitnessPal is because it's not native, because you have to link it to my app. Sometimes that link breaks down, and then I then have to send you a message and be like, oh, can you relink the app, and So that's the only 2 downsides to MyFitnessPal, really. Also, personally, I don't really love the app. I find it very confusing. But if you use it and you find it easy, then all power to you. There is another app that I much prefer. Unfortunately, it's not compatible. You can't link it to my app. But if you are ever on your own, doing this on your own, and we're not working together anymore, and you have the choice, between MyFitnessPal or Cronometer, I would pick Cronometer every time. So if you're ever, wanting to try out a different logging app, have a look at Cronometer. Even the free version of Cronometer, I think, is better than the paid version of MyFitnessPal. But for some reason, MyFitnessPal still is the far more popular and ubiquitous one. But anyway, we won't talk any more about that, but just have a look out for it. Okay, so this is a big one. Hands up on the group chat if you log your meals before you've eaten them. So hands up on the group chat if you always... Actually, just put on the group chat before or after. Just say before or after if you log your meals before you've eaten them or after you've eaten them. There is a right answer, but I'm not going to shame you if you put the wrong answer. Yeah, I had a feeling most of you, and maybe there's a little bit of a both situation. Maybe most of the time you try and do it before, and sometimes you do it afterwards. And just to be clear, I do the same thing. Sometimes I just eat something because I'm like, I've definitely got space in my calories. And I think, right, I'm going to eat this and then I'll log it later. The problem is, even if you do have space in your calories, sometimes it's then going to make it very difficult for you to hit your macro goals as well. Because you might have, a slice of cake, for example, and that's going to be pretty high in calories, very low in protein, very, very low in fiber, and it might only leave you with 200 calories left for the day. And so then you're going to be struggling to hit your protein and fiber if you've only got 200 calories left to play with, and you've still got, 15 grams of protein that you're trying to hit, unless you just chow down on a piece of raw chicken and 2 scoops of psyllium husk or something. You're probably not going to hit your protein and fiber that day. All right, so we all do it. Windy says, yes, I have done that. What, a piece of raw chicken and half a scoop of psyllium husk. Love it. So if you if you log things before you eat them, then it gives you that chance to be like, actually, do I really need this? Or even think, okay, I do want this, but I'm going to have half the amount. So you can just start to do a bit of negotiation with yourself and negotiation with your calories, macros. But also it means you're not going to then log it and then think, fuck, I've fucked up here. I've gone over my calories. I've not hit my protein. I've blown it. I'm a disaster. I'm never going to hit my goals. And you start catastrophizing. And then in that situation as well, it's very easy to think, well, I've already blown my calories, so I might as well just treat today as a free-for-all, and I'll worry about it again tomorrow. And then you end up, overeating because you think you've already decided that today is a lost cause. All right. If you just log things in advance before you put it in your mouth, it gives you that chance to actually make educated decisions rather than. I used this analogy the other day with one of you about if you were going to make a luxury purchase, you would check that you could afford it before you bought it. All right, you're not going to go out and buy a new car or an expensive handbag or something unless you know that you have the money to afford it. Otherwise, you buy that thing, all of a sudden you realise that you're in the red, you're in your overdraft, you're getting text messages from your bank account, your card's been blocked, your partner's angry at you for spending all the money. You wouldn't do that with your money, so don't do it with your calories. Treat it like a budget. Okay, check that you have the budget before you go spending it, and you do that by logging. All right, cool. Hopefully I've driven that point home. Okay, this is where things can easily start to deceive you. So you have been logging everything. You've been so diligent. You've logged every single meal. You've made sure that you're in your calories and macro budget, but somehow you're still not losing weight. And you're like, Ali, you're a terrible coach. I'm doing everything you're telling me, and I'm still not seeing results. You're fired. Chances are you think you've logged everything, but you're not counting the tablespoon of oil that you added that was an extra 130 calories. You're not adding the milk in your tea when you drank 17 cups of tea or coffee throughout the day. You're not counting the fact that when you were cooking your meal for you and your family, you were tasting it every 2 minutes to check that you'd added enough seasoning, and so you're having, a tablespoon of chili every 3 minutes even before you'd sat down to eat your dinner. All those little things add up. I actually did a reel about this earlier in the week. You might have seen it. I was saying, I had 5 or 6 plates in front of me, and I said, this little thing and this little thing and this little thing. I said, you sat next to your mate at lunch and you grab a couple of chips off his plate. Those chips, just because you didn't pay for them, just because you didn't log them, doesn't mean they didn't have calories. So you've got to make sure that you are accurate with your logging. Otherwise, again, that 500 calorie deficit that you think you're in can quickly disappear, and then you are just going to get frustrated that you are not seeing the progress you want. All right, so log accurately. How are we doing on time? Cool. Where is it? There we go. Okay, consistency is key. You are better off logging as accurately as you can every day, even if every now and then you're going out for a meal and you're having to use ChatGPT, or you didn't have the chance to weigh something perfectly, so you had to estimate it using cups or half a packet or whatever it is. You are better off still logging that. Just because you couldn't weigh it, just because you don't know exactly the quantity, you're still better off logging it and logging consistently, so that it becomes a habit, and so that it builds that knowledge. Remember, it's not just about now, but it's about the future, when you're not with me anymore and you haven't got me to kick you up the arse when you haven't made progress for 3 weeks. You need to be resilient in your own habits and in your own knowledge. And so by logging stuff, you're building that knowledge so that you can actually make better decisions long term. So consistency is key. I think this is the last slide. So things that I would love for you to take away and do today or tomorrow, I know it's getting late for you now, is set up some favorites. So whether that's creating recipes, or whether that's adding things to your favorites, or whether that's adding custom meals, set them up. You can do that actually from the settings section of your app. I know some of you, as I mentioned, are using MyFitnessPal, but for those of you who use the native logging, you can do it in MyFitnessPal anyway. You can still create recipes and create favorites. So things that you are eating every day, rather than having to log them every day, which is tedious, create them as meals, create them as recipes, favorites, customs, whatever you're calling it. Create them so that they're quick to log. And start weighing everything. Stop just guessing, because oh, that's weird. I could hear my own voice there. Oh, it's Windy. I think you're unmuted, Windy. Jump in. What do you got to say? Oh, she's gone.
No, sorry. I was telling my son to go to bed.
All right. Night, kids.
Bye-bye.
Because as I said right at the very beginning, just 4 tablespoons of oil could be your entire calorie deficit gone. So you gotta be weighing things in grams, not just glugging them into the pan and hoping for the best. All right, I think that is all of the slides, and I think I've covered everything pretty comprehensively. Just going to questions now. So Eleanor says, I log dinner in the morning if I know what I'm having. That's excellent. Well done, Eleanor. So I can calculate my calories throughout the day. Love that. So if dinner is the meal, that's a really good point, actually. I'm going to remember that for the future. Thanks, Eleanor. So if dinner is the meal that you really look forward to all day, and you would rather negotiate your other meals around it, fab. Log your dinner in the morning. Again, that helps to remove decision fatigue when you get to the end of the day and you've been at work all day and you've done 2 hours of commuting and now you've got to put the kids to bed. If you're then having to think, fuck, what am I going to have for dinner? Chances are, again, you're more likely to make worse choices. If you've already made that decision of what you're going to have for dinner and you've already logged it, then you're kind of double committed, and you're more likely to stick to having that good healthy meal, and you don't have to think about it. So then all of your other meals throughout the day, your breakfast, your snacks, your lunch, that can all be negotiated in order to fit what you're having for dinner. Love that idea. Well done, Eleanor. Windy says, whenever I have days like that, I try to think of the days my children were little. Think of it as a weekly intake instead of stressing out about having enough or not enough food. I feel kinder to myself. Yeah, really good point actually there from Windy, is thinking of it in terms of the week. This is quite useful as well if you do meal prep something. So ideally, you would weigh out your 5 portions, 6 portions, 7 portions, however many portions you're making, ideally you'd weigh out each individual one so that you know exactly how many calories you're getting each day. But ultimately, if you know 100% for certain the total weight of the meal, so if you're 7 portions, if you weighed all the ingredients as you made the dish, over the week, you're going to eat that number of calories. So even if today you have 150 calories of the meal, and tomorrow you have 170 calories of the meal, and then the next day you have 140, over the course of the week, it's going to add up to the same total. So even if it's slightly over today and slightly under tomorrow, over the course of the week, it's going to balance out. So as Wendy said, be kind to yourself. Don't be stressing if today you went over by 50 calories, 100 calories. Just keep that in mind for tomorrow, and maybe make sure that tomorrow you're not over by 100 calories again, and if you can, try and be under by 100 calories, and then you're balancing with the day before. Question from Wendy says, when I choose scrambled eggs, does that mean it already added the milk within that? Or is it better to still add individual ingredients I use to make with mine? Good question. If I was eating out at a restaurant or a cafe, I would probably just use the scrambled egg item in the recipe, because I don't know exactly what was in the restaurant's version of scrambled eggs, and I also don't know exactly what was in the database. So they might both meet up, they might not meet up, so it doesn't matter. When you're making at home, you do know exactly what's in it, so just create it as a custom meal, or create it as a recipe, call it Wendy's eggs, whatever you want to call it, and add whatever it would be, like 30 grams of butter, 3 eggs, and 20 milliliters of water, not water, milk. Yeah, don't be a lazy bum. But like I say, once you've done it the one time, once you've done it once, it's then just as easy to do it as selecting it from the database, all right? Because once you've created it as a favorite or a custom or a recipe, then it will be easier to log it next time, and it's accurate. So if you're always making it the same way, just log it the once, save it as a favorite, save it as a recipe, and then you don't ever have to search for it again. In fact, I think at that point it's probably quicker than searching the database, because if it's one of your favorites, there's only going to be like a handful of them to choose from. All right, great question though, love that. This is why I prefer it so much when you guys turn up to the lives, because you've always thought of things I haven't, so thank you for bringing that to the table. Any other questions? I know it's getting late for you guys now, and it is 9:30. We've had an hour, so if there's nothing else that I've left uncovered, then we will call it a day there. If you're all good, just say all good on the chat, and then jump over onto the group chat, say never good enough, jump over onto the group chat, say hashtag workshop Wednesday, and just give me one thing that you've either learnt today, or one thing that I've reminded you about, or one thing that you are going to start doing that you maybe haven't done before. So just say hashtag workshop Wednesday, and then one thing that you are going to either implement, or one thing you've learnt, or one thing that I've reminded you about. And thank you so much for being here, team. Great questions, great suggestions, and happy logging. I don't know if logging is ever happy, but hopefully it leads you to your happy place, leads you to the goals that you want. All right, well done, team. I will stop the share there, and we will call it a day. Thanks so much, team. Lovely to see you.
See you
guys. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Ali.
See ya.